Hello again, it's Richard Vobes here with another editing workshop. Now, in my last one I was trying to demonstrate the simple process of bringing clips onto a timeline and giving you a couple of options of what you can do with them. And we saw that very simply, and you can see here that this is the workings from last time. But I'm going to get rid of all of that and we're going to start again, because this time, as has been requested and is relevant, because this is how I work, and I'm really only demonstrating how I work. Everybody works in their own unique way, but many of the principles are the same, and you will naturally, if you do a lot of editing, develop your own style. So this is about synchronizing separate audio and pictures, and there may be good reasons that you do this. Well, there usually are good reasons why you do this. One is to get a better quality of audio. So I can talk about that in a bit more detail, but let us first grab a piece of stuff to camera. Now, if you remember, here is my original opening for the little video that I was making. And in the video...
Okay, so this is part one.
I was on location and I didn't carry a clapperboard, which is the traditional way of syncing picture and sound together. And the reason that you would naturally do this is you want a visual representation of the sound, which is the clap, and you want an audio version of the sound, which is also the clap. But each one has been recorded on separate devices, so clearly the picture is on the camera and the audio is on some form of recorder. Now, in this case that I'm using, I have what's called a Zoom F1 field recorder, which is a little recorder that actually fixes to my belt, and using a lapel microphone, as you can see on here, I capture the audio from my mouth clearly. Because this audio is through this type of microphone, its sensitivity is in a small area close to my head, rather than capturing sound from far away, which is great if you want to avoid things like car noises and aeroplanes and things like that. It depends on the polar diagram of the microphone, but let's not get into that because that's more complicated. But generally it will mean that the closer you are to the microphone, as you adjust your sound levels for that, anything further away is going to be much quieter, which in this instance is what I want. But if you were recording sound effects of things, then this sort of microphone is not really the best for that. There's so many different circumstances that you might want to use it, but let's not worry too much about that. The main thing is we've gone out, we've filmed, I've spoken some words to the camera, which are just coming up here.
Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, out on another walk.
Now, what's interesting is, let me just say that the camera has also recorded the audio because there is an onboard microphone on the camera. But I'm not really that interested in using that sound as my final source. However, it is very useful to us at this stage because it means that I can actually hear what I was saying, even if the sound quality isn't very good. And often it's referred to as a scratch track because the sound is a bit scratchy. It's not good quality. So it is useful to have that, and there's an extra use for that which we'll come to at the end. So I'm going to show you two ways of synchronizing the sound. The second way is really dependent on your software. The first way is the old-fashioned way, and I actually use this more often than a much easier and enhanced way. But I do sometimes use the other way, which you will see in a minute. So that's my picture. So what I need to do first of all is just find that point where I synchronize everything. And that is the clapping bit, which was just here coming up.
So this is part one.
Okay, so here you can see I clap There's the audio of the clap. So sometimes the sound and the picture are not always absolutely spot on, but I tend to just take the clap just before I hear the audio, i.e. 1 frame before. That's just my way of doing it. I will put an in point there, so that marks that moment, and then I can just drag just the picture because I don't need the audio. But I'm going to also, just for the sake of example, show you, if I pull all of it, you'll see there is the audio, and here at this point on the scratch track you see 1 frame in. If I get even bigger there, that mark is the clap. So we will actually hear that go clap, clap, like that. So that's for me is quite useful. Okay, but I'm not going to use that audio, and I'm actually not going to use this bit of film. But for the moment, what I'm going to do is just going to separate these, which I can do in this program quite easily. So they're on 2 different tracks. Don't worry about that for the minute. We're going to go back to the original track, which is the important one here. And now I'm going to go into my trim bin, or my media pool, or whatever you want to call it, and find the corresponding audio file that I recorded separately, which happens to be this one, number 1. So if I double click that, I now get on here the WAV file. It shows me the WAV file in the preview window. Now I can see that already I have previously marked this from editing earlier, but let's assume that I haven't, so let's get rid of that. So here is the file. I can now listen to the beginning of this.
This is part 1.
And notice that I have told myself when filming what I'm doing. And that's very handy, because when you've got lots of audio files, unless you're logging them on paper or in a little notebook, it's very difficult to quickly know, well, which one is this? I tend to film in sequence because it's a walk. I'm starting from A and going to B, as it were. So it's easy to think, well, the first bit of audio must be file number 1. The second time I'm talking to the camera is usually file number 2, etc. So that's not so difficult to work out. But sometimes you make mistakes, and it might be file number 3 is actually file number 2, because you may have cocked up, or you may have turned on the recorder by mistake and gone, oh, hang on a minute, I didn't mean to do that. So I always just say on the audio,
this is part 1,
what it is, so that I will know in the edit. So I'm always telling myself these little things. So then comes the clap, and we can recognize the clap because it's usually a very tall spike, and that's it. So then I come up to just before that spike, so I know it'll go like that when I start it. It's again 1 frame if I can, just before the spike, and then I'll put my in point there, and I'll drag that down onto the track beneath the picture in the audio tracks, which is here, and we should then see right at the front here that 1 frame in, I don't know if you can just about see that, is the clap. So that now in theory should be those 2 tracks synchronized. So again, if I play that, remarkably,
hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer.
it is in sync. And if it wasn't in sync, let's say I'd got it wrong, you'd get this effect.
I'm in West Sussex. I'm starting at a very lovely village
where my mouth and my conversation is not lined up. So that is now in sync. What I tend to do then on this program, and I'm sure it's the same in many others, is to link them together. So here is a possible way of doing it on this program. Link the clips. They are now linked so that every time I move any part of that, those 2 now move in tandem, so that I don't get that out of sync. And in fact, if I cut bits of it because I only want certain clips, let's say I don't want that one, then this one, that one is in sync, and so on. This won't make any sense now because I've just cut them at random, as you can see. But if I'm
starting here in, as I say, West Sussex.
They're all in sync still.
Very handsome old houses. houses. You've got the half moon,
So
very handsome old houses.
oh, I didn't cut one. I didn't cut a bit out of that, but you get the drift. If I'd cut a bit out, like, you know, there's a bit there, cut that out, chop that out, join it up.
Handsome old. You've got the half moon.
So there's jump cuts in here. I'll talk about jump cuts in another video. This is just about synchronizing. So that is the first way of synchronizing it. There is a variation on the first way. So if I come back, hang on, let me just extend all of these. So that's the first bit that we were fiddling with. Okay, let me get rid of those two to begin with. And let's just extend this one back to its original parts. That's still in sync. This here, if you remember, I'm just going to cut that down a bit so we've got more space to work in. To just ignore what I've done there. So that's the one we've synced up manually. This is the one, if you remember rightly, is the one that I took as a second look at, the camera one. So this is the camera sound here. This is what we call the scratch track. And we know that, we can look at that because on here it's got the numbers of the file on the video, an MP4 file, and down here it's also got the numbers on the file on the video. That tells us it's the file that came with the picture, which is the camera sound. Over here we've got the file with MP4, which is the picture of the camera, but here it's the zoom 001.wave, which was the audio file. So I know that that is the one recorded on the audio recorder. So I try not to make this too complicated. So this one is just the camera sound, okay, and I can separate these on any of the tracks I like, which is useful if you're overlaying one bit of sound over somewhere else, but not obviously you wouldn't do that with the same bit with the camera sound, but I'm just demonstrating how the tracks work briefly there. Okay, so that's now sometimes I forget to do a clap. And I may do the thing and I may forget to do the clap, and some programs will not give us the option I'm going to show you in a second, and you may have to do this more manually. So supposing that was the situation, I hadn't clapped and I want to sync up the sound more manually. Well, in that instance I will take both tracks from the camera, so the camera sound and the camera picture here, and I will look at the wave file and think, okay, where do I start talking? Roughly about here.
Hello, I'm Richard Vobes.
Here we go, which is a great point to start. So I might for the moment just get close to that for the moment. So just trim that down a bit. So that's the bit of dialogue I want to concentrate on. There is I forget how you do this now in this program. Is it in here? Yeah, let's just raise. I can just magnify this. All this is doing is magnifying, so don't worry too much, just to make it bigger for our purposes of watching. So there's the picture, there's the camera sound. I would go back to my audio, which is the separate sound, the one that now in this scenario I forgot to do a clap and I just recorded willy-nilly without thinking. So then I want to find the hello bit.
Hello.
There it is. That's the word hello. So let's take, now there's two different ways of doing this. You could just look for the hello, put the wave file right on that peak where it goes huh for hello, find the peak down here, which in this instance I'm just going to demonstrate. So I'll bring that down. So that in theory, let's just move that up so you can see a bit better. Of course, I've made a complete blunder there because what I didn't do is put my in point on that. In point there, that's what I want. So that when I bring it down, there is the hello, and I can put that at the same point. So if I mute this track, make that silent by muting it, I should now have a...
Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, out on another walk.
I should be in sync again. So that's quite easy. Because the other option is you can see the two different files. One's on the camera and one is from the audio. And you could, so if I get rid of that for the minute and take out that in point off, go back to just this file as it was, I could drag it down and go, oh, there's the clap, but in this instance we didn't have a clap, so the file is something like this, and I can go, oh yeah, this bit looks the same, and you can basically match it up just as I showed you before. Match that up, bring that back somewhere there, and again, if I mute that,
Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Board Explorer.
That's in sync. If I unmute it, you can use the two to hear if it's in sync.
Out on another walk, and today's walk...
And if it's not in sync, it'll sound like this.
I'm in West Sussex. I'm starting.
You'll get that weird echo, so then you just shunt it around until you get it about right.
Hello, I'm Richard Vobes.
Far easier to do a clap, of course. So that's that. Right, okay, I'm going to end very shortly. I don't want this to drag on. So let's take those completely out, come back to the beginning, like this, take our original one out. So we're starting again with a different method. So this is the second method of synchronizing audio if your software allows it. Okay, and this can, I know some people just swear by this and just do this because it is easy, and it is always useful to know how to do it in the old-fashioned or the long-handed way, because sometimes you just need to be able to do that with things. Okay, so we go back and we find our bit of audio. So let's just vary this a little bit. I'm going to find the second piece of audio so it's not the same old thing. Here's a second piece. So I know this is track 2.
This is in the woods.
And there's my clap telling me what I'm doing. So ordinarily I would do that as you saw. But I'm not going to do that today on this version. So what I'm going to do now is find the audio, which says I'm in the woods, I think, at the beginning there. So let's just see if this is the same one. There's a big long delay.
This is in the woods.
And there's my clap. But instead of syncing them manually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and put it in the same file as the picture. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to find the picture one again. That's the picture one, so I'm highlighting that, and then I want to highlight the audio, which is down here, and I'm going to press the control button so that both of them are highlighted. So that one up there is highlighted and that one, so they're linked now. And if I left on this particular this is how this program works, but programs will work slightly different. If I then right click, I get down here somewhere auto sync audio, and it gives me a choice of how I can automatically sync the audio without having to do it manually. And I'm going to do it based on waveform, and it's going to start syncing and analyzes it and syncs the two together. So because it's got the camera sound, the scratch sound on it, it can read my scratch sound on the picture with the separate sound on the audio recorder, and it matches the two, so that now when I press and play this video, it has substituted the audio track and got rid of the scratch track, but it should now be in sync.
Going through a tiny bit of woodland now, which is predominantly...
And so that is actually not the camera sound anymore, but I can see it's still in sync by looking at the clap.
This is in the woods.
So when I bring it down here onto the timeline, this now is no longer the camera sound, even though it says it's the camera sound, and this is where it can get a little bit confusing. It is no longer the camera sound, it is the audio, because it has replaced it. And why is that not playing anything? Oh, is it because I muted it? No, I haven't muted that track. Well, that's very strange, because that should be playing it. So, but the principle is there. That is how you would do it. But there we are. That's how it should be done. If that's been useful, then do let me know, and I will do more. And if you have problems with it, then let me know. But there we are. That is the process. So 2 different ways to sync sound and vision together, and I hope that's been useful. And sorry about the slight confusion there at the end.